So a few days ago, I recorded a video on this story from 2 years ago about the 1 to 2 million stray cats living in Los Angeles that were unspayed and they were reproducing all over the place. And I was so disturbed to see the comment section where people in a story that had nothing to do with them were being very antagonistic towards homeless people. There was someone that said they preferred the stray cats to the homeless. There was another guy who said we should feed the homeless to the stray cats. Stuff that I thought was really sick. And I didn't understand how you could be supposedly on the side of these animals that are considered defenseless, but then also be so antagonistic towards the people who have the least resources among any of us. And that to me, it felt very tone deaf at a time where 63% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, meaning that most Americans are just one check away from being homeless themselves. But again, that was what was disturbing to me, not that people were, concerned about cats. Now, this guy who shares that same ideology came to my video. He calls himself ANPC5493. And he wrote this comment, pretty much emblematic of the problems with these people. He writes, "Cats aren't going to mug or blank me." So he's trying to assert this idea that homeless people are more inclined to criminal behavior than people who are housed, which is categorically false. Homeless people are actually more likely to be the subject of violent crime than their housed counterparts. I think it's 56% of homeless women experience SA, which is in line with the reality that when you don't have a safe place to lay your head at night, you are open to being attacked, again, whether it's just being robbed or being SA'd, which are things that are more likely to happen to you if you don't have a safe place to lay your head at night. But he's trying to pretend that homeless people are the main ones doing this when in fact they are less likely to do it and more likely to be the victims of it. But it's also like part of what we see a lot of times when people are trying to demonize a group of people. They want to pretend that if we got rid of them, we'd have a utopia. And this is something that will come up more in this comment. If we just didn't have homeless people, there would be no more muggings or essays. It's like, yeah, I have a bridge to sell you if you believe that. They are cleaner and kill pests that carry far more diseases. So he claims that cats are clean and they're beneficial to us by killing pests with more diseases. And this is also more nonsense. I have never been a fan of PETA. That's a group that is hostile even to people that just eat chicken because, they're in defense of all animals. But again, to their credit, they defend all animals. They don't just support their cat waifu like these guys do. And they said that cats who are left outside are killing an estimated average of 14.7 billion birds and other animals every year in the U.S. alone. And the issue of outdoor cats, outdoor feral stray cats, is such a prevalent problem in Australia that they've actually made devices to get them and stop them. And, we've talked about this before. I talked about this in my other video. Cats kill all types of animals. They kill birds, rats, chickens. I mean, the only reason they don't go after humans is because we're taller and on average much larger than they are. And they can still be dangerous to us as well. They have this one disease called toxoplasmosis, which is something that if it is attracted by either a pregnant woman or a child, a baby, they can end up getting brain damage from it. The baby. I didn't even get to mention all of the negative impacts there are on stray cats or outdoor cats to themselves. I mean, I didn't get to mention that the lifespan of a stray or outdoor cat is 2 to 5 years, whereas an indoor one is 12 to 18 years. And the reason that their lifespan is damn near cut in over half is because when they're outside, they are exposed to every awful element of the outdoors. We have seen cats die from eating stuff that was poisoned on purpose by humans. We have seen cats get hit by cars driving at 50, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour. We have seen outdoor cats contract illnesses from either being around another cat with the same illness or some other disease that's transferable. So when you take it all in, between them killing a whole bunch of other animals and being more susceptible to dying prematurely when they're outdoors, there's really no benefit to having them just outside the way that they are. Homeless people are usually drug addicts, and we should bring back asylums and force them into treatment against their will long term. I mean, I love the nice freedom aspect of that. And way to generalize all the people who have, who are homeless. Like, oh, you lost you can't live anywhere anymore because your job went from giving you 40 hours a week to 10, and you were living paycheck to paycheck. You're probably on drugs. Bums destroy cities. I am not sorry. Yes, the people with no power destroy cities, not the landlords who actively pay politicians and other people to prevent more homes from being created, specifically as to preserve the value of their homes, right? Yeah, the bums are destroying the cities, not the city that charges people $17 every 2 hours to park their car somewhere. Yep, definitely. The people with no power are the ones who are destroying the city. The working homeless you speak of are not the bums living in the street. They are in between housing and not blanking up the streets. Stop conflating them with the people begging on the streets. So this is interesting because this is his way of acknowledging that the guys in that comment section painted a broad brush of all homeless people, right? Oh, they do nothing but stink up the city. But it's also his way of blaming me for mentioning the fact that homeless people come in different categories. And really, a homeless person is someone defined as not having a place to live. And that's why I mentioned the different categories of there are some homeless people that are not working. There are some homeless people who are working. But that's not up to me to make the distinction between. That was something that was not brought up by them as even being a distinction worth mentioning, because to them, all homeless people is like lesser than them simply because they don't have anywhere to live. It's really no different from, just as an example, if someone said, instead of deporting all these illegal immigrants, we should get rid of the blacks who do nothing but sit on welfare and rob people. And then you're like, wait a second, I know plenty of black people, myself included, who have worked or are not on welfare, have no criminal record. And then this guy would go, stop conflating the blacks who are productive members of society with the ones who these people were talking about. It's like, well, hell, it wasn't up to me to make that distinction. They said the blacks. We had to clarify that not all blacks are the way that they are being described by this comment. So you see how that's a way of acknowledging that this group of people he despises have members among them who are not what he considers to be bad, but he has to try and pretend that, it was like a slick thing by me to say that, but like by mentioning that I'm somehow distorting something, when in reality, I am not doing anything more than just mentioning that, this is what they do. They just paint everybody with a broad brush. It's not my fault that they couldn't point that out themselves. Also, I should mention that it was only 2 years ago where, after a relative tried to charge me $500 instead of $100 a month to live with them, I was in my car for 3 weeks as a homeless person, and I wasn't working. I was looking for work, but I don't remember begging on the streets or blanking up the streets. It's still one of those things where this goes back to what I was saying of how a person's financial situation can change because either where they're living costs more, or their job is paying them less or using them less, and then they could be susceptible to being on the streets. And even if they have been previously or are currently a productive member of society, a guy like this would still stone them anyway. If you house a bum, all they do is trash the place and bring crime to the community. Housing schemes have been scams. Like I said, the idea that most people committing crimes are homeless people is just... They don't care about facts. They say whatever they can to make themselves feel better about being so, spiteful. And then his last part is talking about how he supports cats being spayed and neutering and charities. That's like the only part that's actually somewhat normal. But I want to just kind of mention this. He has a part in there where he talks about how, these people are begging on the streets. And some of the people I've seen begging on the streets that are not working are veterans. And I had a guy who asked me about like doing a video on why I wouldn't serve in the military, but just kind of consider this. You sign up for the military and you're part of a very small percentage of people that even would do that voluntarily. You go overseas, and maybe you end up having to take someone out, maybe someone you cared about dies, but you come back to the US and you have a hard time moving on from what you saw overseas. Right? You get PTSD. And then on top of this, you have the ridiculous cost of housing, you have the ghost jobs, the jobs that if they hire you will barely use you, so you can't make any money to afford living anywhere. And then suddenly you're on the streets. You have tried to reacclimate into society, but it has not worked out for you, which is why a quarter of all homeless people in the US are veterans. And then you have a guy on the computer who's sitting there talking about how you're essing up the streets and you're destroying the city. That's a real sting to, and this goes back to my point. Like, what person who is considering joining the military, where they might fall victim to that fate of developing PTSD, having a hard time moving on from what they saw, and being in the streets, what person who's joined the military would ever think a guy like ANPC 5493 would be worth possibly dying for? That's who you want to preserve the rights of and protect as one of the Americans on the front lines? You got to be kidding me. But I did this video last year about it was called Weird Men and Their Fake Success, and it was just this pattern I picked up on where a lot of the guys who talk the most crap about other people and their, not so great economic situations, never show any proof that they are doing better than the very people that they disparage. It's easy for ANPC to talk trash about homeless people when, mommy and daddy are letting them sleep in their garage and they're subsidizing his Hot Pockets and his egg rolls. But you'll notice that most people who are successful, right? It could be Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates. You don't see them, online talking crap about those who are not. They're too busy actually perpetuating the various things which have allowed them to become financially astute. If I came online and I said that I hope people take a page out of Vietnam's book and eat cats, I would look like I was crazy. Rightfully so. But why is it that when people come on the computer and they say that we should feed human beings to wild animals, no one condemns that? But if any good came out of this, I'm glad I got to spread some more facts about the dangers of outdoor cats. In a perfect world, we'd be able to get all of them in some kind of facility where they're not outside killing other animals, catching diseases, being eaten up by coyotes. But there's just so many of them that it's hard to do that. And I think people who are decent should be able to look at the conditions of these animals and also the conditions of most of the people that are living in the same country as them and say both of those things need to be improved, instead of, I'm going to love these cats so much, but to hell with people who haven't even done anything to me. Did a homeless person steal this guy's girlfriend? Yeah, the only question I have for him is the 5493 in your name supposed to be synonymous for the year that you're finally going to move out of your parents' house?